The recycled air of the Boeing 737 hummed a low, monotonous drone, a soundtrack to the collective aspiration of escape. Outside, the tarmac of O'Hare shimmered under a relentless June sun, promising the sticky heat of Chicago. Inside, however, a different kind of warmth was blooming, a gentle, insistent thrum against my thigh. It was Barnaby, my emotional support dog, nestled between my legs and the aisle seat, his presence a comforting anchor in the turbulent sea of pre-flight anxiety. Barnaby wasn't just any dog. He was a meticulously trained golden retriever, his coat the color of spun honey, his eyes the warm, intelligent brown of good whiskey. His tail, a feathery plume of pure optimism, had a habit of thumping a soft, rhythmic beat against the cabin floor whenever he was content. And right now, Barnaby was radiating contentment. He'd already navigated the security checkpoint with a dignified poise that put most human passengers to shame. And the initial awkwardness of boarding had melted away with the promise of a smooth flight to my sister's wedding in Denver. My own anxiety, a familiar, unwelcome guest, had begun to recede the moment Barnaby's leash clicked onto his harness. He was more than a pet. He was my lifeline. Diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and a touch of social phobia, the mere act of flying could send me into a spiral of panic attacks. Barnaby, with his unwavering calm and intuitive understanding, was my secret weapon against the encroaching dread. He'd nudge my hand when my breathing grew shallow, rest his head on my lap when the turbulence hit, and simply be there, a furry embodiment of reassurance. The cabin was filling up, a kaleidoscope of carry-on bags and strained smiles. I'd chosen a window seat, hoping the view would distract me. Barnaby, of course, was perfectly content to occupy the space he was allotted, his soft snores a gentle counterpoint to the rising cacophony of boarding. He'd been cleared by my therapist, his vest clearly marked with emotional support animal, and I had all the necessary documentation tucked neatly into my travel folder. I'd anticipated the usual mild curiosity, perhaps a few whispered comments, but nothing more. I was wrong. The moment my neighbor, a woman whose perfectly coiffed blonde hair seemed to defy gravity, settled into the aisle seat, a subtle shift occurred. She was dressed in a crisp navy pantsuit, her face a mask of polite indifference that held a hint of something. Disapproval? Annoyance? I couldn't quite place it. Barnaby, ever the diplomat, offered a soft, almost imperceptible wag of his tail in her general direction, a silent greeting. She ignored it. As the flight attendants began their pre-flight safety demonstration, the woman shifted again, her gaze fixed on Barnaby. Her lips, painted a vibrant shade of crimson, tightened almost imperceptibly. I felt a prickle of unease. Barnaby, oblivious to her scrutiny, was now resting his chin on my knee, his tail giving a lazy thump against my jeans. He looked, I thought with a surge of affection, utterly blissful. His ears were perked, his eyes soft and half-closed, a picture of canine serenity. Then, it happened. The flight attendant, a young woman with a bright, practiced smile, was making her final sweep of the aisle. She paused at our row, her eyes briefly meeting mine before landing on Barnaby. Her smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. "Ma'am," the blonde woman began, her voice cutting through the drone of the engines like a shard of ice. It was a voice that demanded attention, the kind that implied a fundamental misunderstanding of the world on the part of anyone who dared to cross its path. I have to say something." I turned to her, my heart giving a little lurch. "Yes?" "That dog," she continued, her gaze unwavering, her tone laced with an almost theatrical outrage. He's too happy." I blinked. "Too happy?" I repeated, the words feeling absurd on my tongue. She nodded, a sharp, decisive movement. "Yes, he's practically beaming. And I don't think that's appropriate for an emotional support animal." A wave of disbelief washed over me, followed swiftly by a rising tide of indignation. Barnaby, my sweet, gentle Barnaby, was being accused of excessive cheerfulness? It was so preposterous, so utterly bizarre, that for a moment I thought I was having a hallucination. "Ma'am," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "he's trained to be calm and supportive. His happiness is a sign that he's comfortable and well-adjusted. That's what makes him a good emotional support animal." She scoffed, a delicate, dismissive sound. "No, no. Emotional support animals are meant to be, well, a bit subdued, a bit comforting. This dog looks like he's about to break into a song and dance number. It's distracting, and frankly, it's making me uncomfortable." My jaw tightened. Her discomfort, it seemed, was the only thing that mattered. My own carefully managed anxiety, my reliance on Barnaby's presence to navigate this very flight, was apparently irrelevant. "With all due respect," I said, my voice now laced with a steel I hadn't known I possessed, "my dog's emotional state is not a violation of any airline policy. He's here to provide me with support, and he's doing an excellent job." The flight attendant, caught between the two of us, looked increasingly flustered. "Ma'am," she said to the blonde woman, her voice a little strained, "the dog is properly identified and has the necessary documentation." "But he's too happy," the woman insisted, her voice rising, drawing the attention of other passengers. Whispers rippled through the aisle. I could feel eyes on us, a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Barnaby, sensing the shift in atmosphere, nudged my hand with his wet nose, his tail giving a tentative thump. "His happiness is a reflection of his well-being and his positive impact on me," I reiterated, my voice firm. "I don't see how that's a problem." The blonde woman leaned closer, her crimson lips forming a tight line. "Look," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, yet still audible whisper. "I'm a frequent flyer. I know the rules. And too happy is definitely not on the approved list for service animals. It's disruptive. I demand that something be done." Demand. The word hung in the air, heavy with entitlement. I felt a familiar knot of anxiety begin to tighten in my chest, my palms growing clammy. This was exactly the kind of confrontation I dreaded, the kind that could send me spiraling. But then I looked down at Barnaby. His warm brown eyes met mine, and in them I saw not just innocent canine affection, but a silent strength, a steady presence that anchored me. He was here for me, and I, in turn, had to be here for him. "I'm not going to have my dog removed because he's not miserable enough for you," I said, my voice clear and unwavering, surprising even myself. "He's providing a vital service, and his demeanor is a testament to his effectiveness." The flight attendant, clearly out of her depth, wrung her hands. "Ma'am, perhaps we can discuss this at the gate?" "No," the blonde woman snapped, her patience apparently at an end. "I want this resolved now. I'm going to speak to the captain. I will not sit next to a dog that is clearly over-emotional. Over-emotional." The irony was so thick I could almost taste it. I, the one with the diagnosed anxiety disorder, was being accused of having an over-emotional dog. The absurdity of it all was almost comical, if it weren't for the very real threat of Barnaby being taken away from me, leaving me stranded with my own anxieties in the pressurized cabin of a commercial airliner. The middle of the story was clearly going to be about the escalating absurdity of Karen's claims, and my fight to keep Barnaby by my side. The blonde woman's words, "I demand that something be done," hung in the air, heavy with entitlement. A familiar knot of anxiety began to tighten in my chest, my palms growing clammy. This was exactly the kind of confrontation I dreaded, the kind that could send me spiraling. But then I looked down at Barnaby. He nudged my hand with his wet nose, his tail giving a lazy thump against my jeans. a silent, steady presence. I saw not just innocent canine affection, but a silent strength, a steady presence that anchored me. His very calmness was a testament to his effectiveness, the vital service he provided. The flight attendant, who had been attempting to mediate with a practiced smile that was now starting to falter, wrung her hands. "Ma'am, please," she pleaded, her voice a little strained. "We can discuss this at the gate." "There's no need for this to escalate." "Discuss it at the gate?" the blonde woman snapped, her voice rising, cutting through the general murmur of the cabin. "I am not discussing it at the gate. I want this disruption dealt with now. I want him removed." She gestured at Barnaby with a perfectly manicured hand, her lips pursed. "He's clearly not functioning as an emotional support animal. He's too, exuberant." "Exuberant?" I repeated, the word feeling absurd on my tongue. "He's a golden retriever. He's happy. That's his nature. And his nature is what helps me." My voice, surprisingly, was steady. The steel I hadn't known I possessed seemed to be surfacing, fueled by a potent mix of disbelief and indignation. His well-being is a direct reflection of his effectiveness. He's trained to be calm and supportive, and he is calm and supportive. He's also happy, which is a sign of a healthy, well-adjusted animal. There is no violation of any airline policy that states an emotional support animal cannot be happy. The flight attendant looked from the blonde woman to me, her expression caught between the two of us, increasingly flustered. I understand," she began, her voice a little strained. "But the passenger is expressing concern. We need to ensure all passengers are comfortable. And my comfort is being compromised by her unfounded accusation?" I countered, meeting her gaze. "Barnaby is not disruptive. He is resting quietly at my feet, as he has been since we boarded. His mere presence is a comfort to me. The only thing causing discomfort here is this unwarranted interrogation." The blonde woman scoffed, a delicate, dismissive sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, please, it's a song and dance number. He's just a dog. And frankly, his beaming is rather distracting. It makes me uncomfortable. I demand that something be done." Her jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing as she fixed her gaze on Barnaby, who, bless his heart, had merely shifted his weight and let out a soft sigh. "With all due respect," I said, my voice now laced with a steel I hadn't known I possessed. "His happiness is not a distraction. It's a testament to his effectiveness. He's trained to be calm and supportive, and he's doing an excellent job. And I am diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. His presence is not just a convenience, it's a necessity for me to fly. Removing him would be detrimental to my well-being." The flight attendant, sensing the escalating tension and drawing the attention of other passengers who were now openly craning their necks, tried again. "Ma'am, I'm sure we can resolve this. Perhaps if you could just provide the necessary documentation for your animal." "I have it," I said, reaching into my bag for Barnaby's vest and his accompanying paperwork. "But I shouldn't have to justify his existence or his happiness to anyone." The blonde woman leaned forward, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair practically defying gravity. "Documentation is one thing. But I've flown with many emotional support animals. They are supposed to be subdued, not practically bouncing off the walls with joy. He's not bouncing off the walls," I said, my voice dangerously low. "He's lying down. He's calm. He's happy. Are you suggesting that a happy dog is somehow a threat?" "I'm suggesting," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "that his level of cheerfulness is highly unusual for an animal meant to provide emotional support. It borders on being a pet, not a service animal." The implication hung in the air, a subtle jab at the legitimacy of Barnaby's role and my own need for him. Whispers rippled through the aisle, a mixture of curiosity and judgment. I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks, but I forced myself to breathe deeply, focusing on the gentle, insistent thrum of Barnaby's tail against my thigh. The flight attendant, clearly out of her depth, finally took a step back. "Ma'am," she said to the blonde woman, her voice a little shaky. "I'm afraid I can't ask the passenger to remove their animal based on its perceived emotional state." "Oh, you can't, can you?" the blonde woman said, her lips tightening. "Well then, I'll speak to the captain. This is unacceptable. I paid for a peaceful flight, not a trip to the zoo with an overly enthusiastic dog." She stood up, her crisp navy pantsuit radiating an aura of self-importance. "I demand to speak to the captain. Now." "Ma'am, please sit down," the flight attendant pleaded, her eyes wide. "The captain is preparing for departure." But the blonde woman was already moving, her stride determined, heading towards the cockpit door. The flight attendant, looking utterly mortified, followed her. I watched them go, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Barnaby nudged my hand again, a soft, comforting pressure. I buried my face in his fur for a brief moment, inhaling his familiar, comforting scent. "It's okay, boy," I whispered, though my voice trembled. "We'll be okay." The cabin door shut with a soft thud, and the plane began to move. The engines whined, a low, rising crescendo that always amplified my anxiety. I braced myself, my hands gripping the armrests. I could hear muffled voices from the front of the cabin, a rising cacophony that made my carefully managed anxiety threaten to breach its walls. Barnaby, sensing my distress, rested his head on my lap, his warm weight a grounding force. Suddenly, the blonde woman reappeared, her face a thundercloud. She marched back down the aisle, her eyes scanning the passengers, and stopped directly in front of my row. She leaned in, her voice a conspiratorial, yet still audible whisper that cut through the drone of the engines like a shard of ice. "He's going to be removed," she announced, a smug satisfaction in her tone. "The captain agrees. Your dog is too happy. It's a violation. You'll be flying without him." I blinked. "What?" That's impossible." "Oh, it's very possible," she retorted, a triumphant glint in her eye. "I know the rules. Emotional support animals are meant to be calm and unobtrusive. Yours is clearly not. I told them he was disruptive, and frankly, his constant state of bliss is rather unsettling." My jaw tightened. Her statement, so utterly divorced from reality, was staggering. "He's not disruptive," I said, my voice a low growl. "He's an emotional support animal. His happiness is a sign of his effectiveness. It means he's comfortable, well-adjusted, and providing the support I need. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of what an emotional support animal is." The flight attendant reappeared, looking even more flustered than before. "Ma'am," she said, her voice a little strained, "we're about to take off. Please return to your seat." "This is not over," the blonde woman said, ignoring the flight attendant and fixing her gaze back on me. "I will not have my flight ruined by your overly cheerful pet. I want him gone." "He is not a pet," I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts. "He is a vital part of my ability to manage my diagnosed anxiety disorder, and his happiness is a testament to his training and effectiveness. The irony is so thick I could almost taste it. You're causing a scene and making me anxious, all because my dog is happy." "That's ridiculous," she scoffed. "He's making me uncomfortable, and that's all that matters. I'm a frequent flyer." "I know the rules, and your dog doesn't fit them." She leaned closer, her crimson lips painted into a tight, severe line. "I demand that something be done." The flight attendant stepped between us, her posture a shield. "Ma'am, please. We need to de-escalate this. If you continue to cause a disturbance, I will have to involve the captain more formally." "Good," the blonde woman spat. "Do that, because I am not sitting next to a dog that looks like he's won the lottery. It's unnatural, and it's distracting." The plane lurched, a gentle reminder that we were indeed moving. The blonde woman took a step back, a look of sheer disbelief washing over her face as the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing our ascent. She glared at me, then at Barnaby, who had, at the sound of the engines, tucked his head closer to my lap. His ears perked, but his body relaxed. "This is not over," she hissed, before turning and stalking back to her seat, muttering under her breath. I sank back into my seat, my body trembling. The familiar knot of anxiety was back, tighter than ever. Barnaby nudged my hand, a soft, warm pressure that was the only thing keeping me tethered to the ground. He was still radiating contentment, his tail giving a soft, almost imperceptible thump against the carpet. His happiness, the very thing that had caused such a scene, was now my only solace. The flight attendant gave me a sympathetic glance as she passed, her own face etched with relief that the immediate confrontation had ended, at least for now. But I knew, with a sinking certainty, that this was far from over. The blonde woman was clearly not someone who backed down easily, and the thought of her continuing her campaign against Barnaby for the next 5 hours was a wave of dread washing over me. The middle of the story was clearly going to be about the escalating absurdity of Karen's claims and my fight to keep Barnaby by my side, a fight I was determined to win, for his sake and for mine. The blonde woman leaned towards me, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, yet still audible whisper that cut through the low thrum of the engines. "The captain has agreed. He's being removed. It's a violation of all airline policy for an animal to be disruptive." She punctuated this with a sharp, decisive movement of her chin, as if to emphasize her victory. The word hung in the air, heavy with entitlement. My stomach lurched. This was exactly the kind of confrontation I dreaded, the kind that could send me spiraling. I felt a familiar knot of anxiety begin to tighten in my chest, my palms growing clammy. But then I looked down at Barnaby. He was resting his head on my lap, his big brown eyes half closed, a gentle, contented sigh escaping him. He looked, I thought with a surge of affection, utterly blissful. His tail gave a lazy thump against my jeans, a soft, rhythmic beat against the cabin floor. He was radiating pure, unadulterated calm. The irony was so thick I could almost taste it. The very picture of emotional support, accused of being disruptive. "With all due respect," I began, my voice remarkably steady, a steel I hadn't known I possessed surfacing. "That's not possible. Barnaby is not disruptive. He's providing a vital service. His presence is required for me to fly. And he's not happy because he's being disruptive. He's happy because he's comfortable and well-adjusted, which is a testament to his training and effectiveness as an emotional support animal." I met her gaze directly, refusing to be intimidated. His happiness is a reflection of his well-being, and therefore my own. It's precisely what makes him such an excellent emotional support animal. She scoffed, a delicate, dismissive sound that barely disturbed the air. "That's preposterous. No animal can be too happy. It's unsettling. It draws attention. It's a distraction. Frankly, it's making me uncomfortable." The flight attendant, who had been hovering nearby, her bright, practiced smile now faltering, stepped forward hesitantly. "Ma'am, our policy on emotional support animals is quite clear. They are permitted as long as they don't pose a direct threat or cause a significant disruption. And Barnaby here," she gestured with a slightly trembling hand towards my dog, "has been nothing but a model passenger. He's quiet. He's calm. He's beaming." The blonde woman interrupted, her voice rising again, sharp and insistent. "He's practically radiating joy, and that's not what an emotional support animal is supposed to do. It's supposed to be subdued, calm, not practically doing a song and dance number with his tail. I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me, followed swiftly by a rising tide of indignation. Subdued? My dog is supposed to be subdued? He's a golden retriever. His natural disposition is joyful, and his joy is a direct reflection of the positive impact he has on me. If he were distressed, that would be a disruption. I could feel the whispers rippling through the aisle now, a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Other passengers were starting to crane their necks, their eyes flicking between us. Barnaby, sensing the shift in atmosphere, nudged my hand with his wet nose, giving a soft whine. The flight attendant wrung her hands, looking increasingly flustered. "Ma'am, I assure you, there's no rule about an emotional support animal being too happy. It's not a recognized criterion for removal." Her voice was a little strained, her usual professional demeanor cracking under the pressure. "Well, there should be," the blonde woman snapped, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair seeming to defy gravity with the sheer force of her indignation. "I'm a frequent flyer. I know the rules. Animals that are overly excited are not allowed. And he's overly excited. Look at him." Barnaby, as if on cue, stretched languidly, his tail giving another soft thump against the carpeted floor. His ears were perked, his eyes soft and half-closed, a picture of canine serenity. He looked, I thought, utterly content. And that contentment was, in fact, my lifeline. "He's not overly excited," I said, my voice calm but firm. "He's comfortable. He's relaxed. He's doing exactly what he's trained to do. Provide me with a sense of security and well-being. His demeanor is a testament to his effectiveness. If you're uncomfortable, perhaps Yuhin should consider moving seats." The words were out before I could stop them. A surprising surge of assertiveness. Her jaw tightened. The mask of polite indifference she'd worn dissolved, revealing a flash of something sharp and unpleasant. "I will not be moved. You are the one with the disruptive animal. I demand that something be done." She turned her glare on the flight attendant. "I want to speak to the captain, now." The flight attendant swallowed hard. "Ma'am, we are preparing for takeoff. Any passenger concerns will be addressed after we reach cruising altitude. For now, please return to your seat and secure your safety belt." "This is not a minor concern," the blonde woman insisted, her voice a low growl. "This is a matter of comfort and safety for all passengers. I will not tolerate an animal practically beaming at me." She drew herself up, her navy pantsuit looking impossibly crisp even in the face of her escalating drama. "I expect this to be resolved. I have paid for a comfortable flight, and I am not getting it." She then turned on her heel with a sharp, decisive movement and marched back towards her seat, casting a venomous glare over her shoulder as if daring me to move a muscle. I watched her go, a mixture of relief and apprehension swirling within me. The immediate confrontation had passed, but the threat lingered. She had made it clear she wouldn't let this go. I took a deep, shaky breath, my hand still feeling clammy. Barnaby nudged my leg again, a soft, reassuring pressure. I stroked his head, burying my fingers in his soft fur. "It's okay, boy," I murmured, my voice a little shaky. "We're okay." He responded with a happy sigh, his tail thumping a gentle rhythm against the floor. He was happy. And that was precisely the point. The flight attendant, her face a picture of professional strain, gave me a small apologetic nod before moving down the aisle to assist other passengers. She was caught between a rock and a hard place, and I felt a flicker of sympathy for her. This was clearly not in her training manual. The cabin doors were sealed, and the monotonous drone of the engines intensified as the plane began to taxi. The pre-flight safety demonstration began, the flight attendants moving with practiced grace, their voices echoing through the cabin. I tried to focus on their instructions, to anchor myself in the familiar routine, but my mind kept replaying the blonde woman's words. Practically beaming. Too happy. It was so absurd, so utterly preposterous that I almost wanted to laugh. But the laughter died in my throat. She had threatened to speak to the captain, and while I was confident Barnaby was within his rights, the idea of being singled out, of having him removed, sent a fresh wave of anxiety coursing through me. As the plane accelerated down the runway, the G-force pressing me back into my seat, Barnaby shifted, resting his head more firmly on my lap. His warmth was a familiar, comforting anchor in the turbulent sea of pre-flight anxiety, a sea that was now being stirred by a very human storm. I could feel his steady presence, the gentle, insistent thrum of his breathing against my thigh, a silent reassurance. He was my secret weapon against the encroaching dread, my furry embodiment of calm. The wheels left the tarmac, and the collective aspiration of escape filled the cabin as we ascended into the sky. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the sensation of flight wash over me. Barnaby let out a soft sigh, settling deeper into his spot. I opened my eyes and looked at him. His tail gave a slow, contented thump. He looked, I thought, with a surge of protective affection, like the happiest dog in the world. And in that moment, that was all that mattered. The flight attendant came by our row, offering a tray of drinks. She paused, her gaze lingering on Barnaby for a moment, then on me. Her expression was a complex mix of weariness and understanding. "Everything all right?" she asked softly, her voice pitched low so as not to disturb the passengers nearby. I offered a small, grateful smile. "Yes, thank you. He's being a perfect gentleman." She nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "He certainly is. A very good boy." She moved on, leaving me with a renewed sense of quiet determination. She saw it too. She saw Barnaby's calm, his contentment, and understood that it was a positive thing. The blonde woman, however, was not satisfied. As the seatbelt sign was switched off and passengers began to unbuckle, I heard her voice, still sharp and carrying, from a few rows ahead. "Excuse me," she was saying, her tone laced with an impatient edge. "I need to speak to someone about the animal. It's still being excessively cheerful." A collective groan seemed to ripple through the cabin, a silent testament to the shared desire for peace. The plane had barely leveled off, and she was already reigniting the fire. I braced myself. This was not going to be an easy flight. The middle of the story was clearly going to be about the escalating absurdity of Karen's claims and my fight to keep Barnaby by my side, a fight that seemed to be just beginning. I could feel the tension radiating from her, a palpable wave of disapproval that seemed to follow her wherever she went. It was clear she wouldn't rest until she had her way, no matter how preposterous her demands. The irony of her demanding a subdued Barnaby while she herself was radiating an almost alarming level of agitated entitlement wasn't lost on me. It was a bizarre, unsettling dance, and I was stuck in the middle of it, with Barnaby, my furry embodiment of pure optimism, as the unwitting star. The hum of the engines, once a monotonous drone, now seemed to vibrate with an amplified tension. The woman, let's call her Karen, because honestly, who else would it be, had apparently decided that the middle of a commercial airliner, somewhere over Indiana, was the ideal place for a full-blown theatrical production. Her voice, previously a sharp, cutting instrument, had somehow managed to escalate, laced with a righteous indignation that made the recycled air feel even thinner. "He's disruptive," she declared, each syllable punctuated with a sharp jab of her finger in Barnaby's general direction. Barnaby, bless his golden heart, was still resting his head on my lap, his tail giving a slow, rhythmic thump against the carpeted floor of the aisle. A gentle beat that was, to my ears, the very definition of calm. He looked up at me, his soft brown eyes questioning, not with fear, but with a mild, almost amused curiosity. He was, after all, a dog who had navigated security checkpoints with more dignity than some humans I knew. The flight attendant, bless her, was doing her best. Her bright, practiced smile had long since faltered, replaced by a look of increasing bewilderment. She was caught between the escalating outrage of Karen and the quiet, unwavering resolve of me, with Barnaby as the unwitting and frankly adorable centerpiece of this whole absurd drama. "Ma'am," the flight attendant began, her voice a little strained. "As I've explained, the dog is not exhibiting any disruptive behavior. He's quiet, he's contained, and he's not bothering anyone." She shot a quick, apologetic glance in my direction. "He's also well within the airline's guidelines for emotional support animals." "Guidelines?" Karen scoffed, a delicate, dismissive sound that somehow managed to convey a lifetime of privilege. "The guideline is that these animals are supposed to be supportive, not a furry embodiment of pure, unadulterated glee. He's practically beaming. It's unnatural. It's distracting. Frankly, it's making me uncomfortable." My jaw tightened. Uncomfortable. She was making me uncomfortable. My carefully managed anxiety, my reliance on Barnaby's steady presence to navigate this very flight, was apparently irrelevant. Her perceived discomfort, born from an almost pathological aversion to a happy dog, was the only thing that mattered. "With all due respect, ma'am," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, a steel I hadn't known I possessed surfacing from the depths of my carefully constructed calm. "Barnaby's demeanor is a testament to his effectiveness. He's trained to be calm and supportive, and his current state is a reflection of his well-being, which directly impacts my own. He's not unnatural or unadulterated glee. He's a happy, healthy dog, and his happiness is a positive impact on me." I met her gaze, and for the first time I saw it clearly. Not just annoyance, but a genuine, almost palpable confusion. It was as if the very concept of an animal expressing joy, especially in a way that threatened her own meticulously crafted sense of order, was a violation of some fundamental law of the universe. He's too happy," she repeated, as if the words themselves held some profound, irrefutable truth. It's like he's mocking me." I almost choked. Mocking her? Barnaby, who was currently emitting a soft, contented sigh and resting his chin on my knee, was mocking her. The absurdity of it all was so thick I could almost taste it. The flight attendant, bless her again, tried to de-escalate. "Ma'am, perhaps we could discuss this further at the gate upon landing," she suggested, her voice a little more urgent now, sensing the rising tide of passenger attention. Whispers rippled through the aisle, a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Some passengers were openly looking, others were pretending not to, their eyes flicking surreptitiously towards our row and then quickly away. "No," Karen snapped, her patience apparently at an end. She leaned forward, her crimson lips pursed into a tight line. "I want this addressed now. I demand to speak to the captain. This is unacceptable. I am a frequent flyer, and I know the rules. Emotional support animals are supposed to be subdued, not practically performing a song and dance number with their tail." Barnaby's tail thumped a little harder against the floor at the mention of his tail, a subtle, almost imperceptible wag. He seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere, the rising tension. But it didn't seem to faze him. His focus remained on me, his steady presence a silent reassurance. "Ma'am," the flight attendant pleaded, "there is no policy against an emotional support animal being content. In fact, their contentment is indicative of their success in providing support." She was clearly out of her depth, her usual practiced demeanor crumbling under the weight of Karen's insistence. "That's preposterous," Karen declared, her voice booming, cutting through the drone of the engines like a shard of ice. "He's clearly disruptive. He's He's too happy. It's unsettling. I demand that something be done." The word demand hung in the air, heavy with entitlement, a familiar knot of anxiety beginning to tighten in my chest, my palms growing clammy. This was exactly the kind of confrontation I dreaded, the kind that could send me spiraling. But then I looked down at Barnaby. He nudged my hand with his wet nose, his eyes soft and trusting. He was a testament to the power of connection, a furry embodiment of unconditional acceptance. He was more than just a dog. He was my vital service, my anchor in a world that often felt too overwhelming. His calm, his joy, was a direct reflection of the positive impact he had on me, and that impact was profound. "He's not disruptive, ma'am," I said, my voice clear and unwavering. "He's providing a vital service. His happiness is a reflection of his well-being and my ability to manage my diagnosed anxiety disorder and social phobia. He's trained to be calm and supportive, and he is exactly that. He's not causing any harm." Karen's perfectly coiffed blonde hair seemed to practically vibrate with indignation. "Harm? He's causing me distress. He's too exuberant?" The flight attendant wrung her hands, looking from Karen to me, her expression a mixture of sympathy and panic. "Ma'am," she tried again, her voice a little softer now. "I understand you're concerned, but the documentation for Mr. Barnaby is in order, and he's not violating any airline policy. Perhaps we can find you a different seat, if you're that uncomfortable." Karen glared, her chin lifting defiantly. "Move me. I'm the one being inconvenienced by this spectacle of canine overenthusiasm." She leaned towards the flight attendant, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, yet still audible whisper. "She's probably lying about the whole emotional support thing. They all do it. They just want to bring their pets everywhere. And look at him. He's practically bouncing off the walls with joy." I felt a surge of disbelief, followed swiftly by a rising tide of indignation. Lying? Barnaby? He was a meticulously trained golden retriever, registered as an emotional support animal, with all the necessary documentation, and to accuse him of being too happy was so preposterous, so utterly bizarre, that for a moment I thought I was having a hallucination. "He is not bouncing off the walls," I stated, my voice a little louder than I intended, drawing more attention. "He is resting. And he is providing me with crucial emotional support. My diagnosed anxiety disorder and social phobia make air travel extremely difficult for me. Barnaby's presence is not a luxury, it is a necessity. He is trained to be calm and supportive, and his current state is a testament to his effectiveness." Karen scoffed again, a sound like a tiny, sharp intake of breath, followed by an expulsion of air. "Oh, please. You're being over-emotional. He's just a dog. A very happy dog, apparently. And I don't like it." The irony was so thick I could almost taste it. I, with my diagnosed anxiety disorder, was being accused of being over-emotional by a woman who was practically having a meltdown over a dog's perceived happiness. The absurdity of it all was almost comical, were it not for the very real threat she posed to my ability to complete this flight. "Ma'am," the flight attendant said, her voice a little firmer now, a hint of steel creeping in. "I cannot ask the passenger to remove their dog based on the dog being happy. The dog is not disruptive, and the passenger has provided all necessary documentation." Karen's eyes narrowed, and she turned her formidable gaze directly on Barnaby. He met her stare with his usual gentle, unwavering gaze, his tail